Hey guys, Jangro here, and welcome to Valhelsia 5, Episode 13. We're going to continue with create and automation and integrating with applied energistics and automating all the things. And we're going to set up some pretty cool machines that automate some of the more annoying things that we have to craft with create all automatically. So stick around. Okay, so before we get started on these things, let's just take a quick recap of what's been going on here. Here's our windmill. That was done in a previous episode. You can check out that, and also this tree farm / kelp farm was also done in a previous episode. I'll link to both of those in the description, and you can check those things out. In here, we did this stuff on stream on Twitch TV /Jangro, and also we'll be streaming this on Twitch TV /Sticky Piston. I stream in a couple places, also linked to in the description. But here's how we've got create and applied energistics integrated together. Here's a mechanical press. The things go in here. We can put them in manually, but we do it automatically with applied energistics. And we've got all these processing patterns for different sheets and plates. They come in here, they get pressed in the press and come out here and get sucked back into the network with this import bus. And so we just go in here and we go to make a sheet, like, say we want to get some copper sheets. Let's make 10 of those. It's just going to send these things out here, send them through just like that. Okay, let's take a look at this shapeless crafting with a basin as well, because there have been some changes to this since the last episode where I did talk about this. This is where we make things like andesite alloy and brass ingots. And now brass ingots has charcoal because there's a blaze burner down there, but the simple one here is andesite alloy, and we can demonstrate this with this example. One andesite, one zinc nugget makes an andesite alloy. And if we try to craft like 100, it's going to send 100 andesites and 100 zinc nuggets into the system. And before, we just had an andesite funnel here, sending things out one at a time. Actually, it was a brass funnel, so we could send out stacks at a time. Now, a basin can only hold 16 things at once of each type of ingredient. So if we sent 16 andesite and 16 zinc through here, that would be fine. They'd each go in there just fine, get crafted. But if we try to send like 20 of each, then it would fill up with 16 andesites, and then the other 4 would back up on the belt here and block the zinc from getting in here. So we have to figure out how to alternate this stuff. And I did this with these chutes, these smart chutes. And these are filtered to send out one thing at a time. One is set up to send out andesite, and one is set up to set up zinc. And what this is going to do, and there's an item vault above this. This could just be as easily be a chest, but it needs to be too wide so that the things all go in through that pattern provider and come out separately in these 2 different chutes. And because we've got them filtered and because they set out one each, they effectively alternate these things. So let's make like 100 andesite alloy and watch this work. So you can see here, these chutes are dropping these things individually and essentially alternating them because there's a slight delay. And it works really well. And the basin never gets backed up because it's always alternating, and then it's always able to craft a pattern to make more room. If all the zinc or all the andesite came out at once, this thing would get backed up and stop working when we try to do big jobs. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to solve this problem. Create's fun like this because there's definitely some puzzle solving to automate certain things. All this is getting powered by our windmill, which I have coming down here now. This is new. This is kind of our power distribution room. Here's what's coming from the windmill. It's just going 7 miles an hour. It's got a lot of stress capacity, but it's really slow. And so what I've done is put these adjustable chain gear shifts in here. And the way these work is if you redstone power the input side of a chain gear shift, it doubles the speed on the output side, which is over here. And we're doubling it again, and I'm not doubling it here. This is not turned on just yet. But you can see here, we've got the speed now up to 56. So 7 coming in, 7, 14, 28, 56. And if we turn this one on, it will increase the speed, double it again up to 112. Here's how our network stress situation is. We're doing well. We've got 35, almost 3,600 stress units coming out of the windmill. We're using not even 1,000 of it with those machines up there. Now that's related to how fast things are going. So we can speed things up even more with this analog lever. And now you can see it's going up to 112. And we're using a lot more stress now. You can hear the mixer going faster now. So far so good, but we're going to run out. If we add a bunch of machines, we're going to run out of this. So to resolve this, we can slow this down a little bit because we really don't need things to go that fast. This analog lever gives us a fine control over speed as they're coming through here. And we can put one of these on every single one. And in fact, if we put a lever on the output end, it cuts it in half or lowers the speed. So we could totally fine-tune exactly how much speed we want to come out of our system like this. Ultimately, we want to replace this with a rotation speed controller, which is this right here. That requires a precision mechanism and brass casing, both of which are really annoying to craft. We have to go through this 5-stage, 3-step process to make a precision mechanism. You do not want to do this manually. So we're going to set that up. And casings as well are annoying to make because you need to put down the log, strip it, and then manually apply a brass ingot to it, or whatever type of casing you want, andesite, brass. With a deployer, we can automate this whole thing. So we're going to set up a machine that's going to strip logs and then turn the strip logs into casings automatically. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. One more thing to look at first, when we're talking about managing our rotational power, is these things are always running, which is kind of a waste. This one's always using, at this speed, 672 stress units. This one's using 336. This one's using 168. And the faster we make this go, the more they'll use. But I set up clutches on the backs of these. How can I get in here? Like right here, we've got this clutch. And if we just put a lever on it and power that lever, it stops the machine from working. And we can put clutches on all the machines and manually control those. But we can also put this redstone link on here, and I've got this one configured. The way a redstone link works is you just put it down and you put just a couple of blocks in there to identify it. So I've just got this gear, and I put the mixer on this one so we know that this is powering the mixer. And over here I put a gear. These could be anything, but I put a gear and a mechanical press to identify this one. And this like ring around the antenna means this is the receiving end. If we right click on it, that goes away, and now this is a sending end of a link. Right click again to get that back. And I've got these things over here. So here we've got the same configured redstone link here, and so here's our mixer controller and here's our press controller. And if we flip these switches, it's sending a redstone signal individually to those two clutches and turning the machines off and on. So that's pretty neat. So ultimately what we want to do is for every machine we have is set up a controller for it. And we're going to put that all in a controller room. And we're going to use level emitters from Applied Energistics to turn the machines on when exactly we're crafting a thing. So that's going to allow us to have only the machines turned on that we absolutely need to have turned on. And by doing so, we can probably forever just power all of our create automation with the power that we're getting out of a windmill. Of course, we're going to probably create the steam engine that is going to create more power because that's fun, but this is going to allow us to use our rotational power most efficiently. Okay, let's start building some stuff. I've got this planned out a little bit. So we're going to put our automation for casings on this wall, and we're going to automate sandpaper. So one I didn't mention before, another annoying recipe is making polished rose quartz. This is used in a lot of things, specifically these electron tubes, and we need electron tubes for deployers and brass funnels and brass tunnels. And so we need a lot of electron tubes. And to make those, we need polished rose quartz. And to make polished rose quartz, we need to polish rose quartz with sandpaper. So that's pretty tedious, but we can automate that whole thing by putting sandpaper in a deployer, run rose quartz through that. So we're going to set that up right here. This is just where I want to set up a millstone, really basic stuff so we can get stuff like different dyes and different colors and that sort of thing. And the precision mechanism, this 5-stage, 3-step process is going to go on this wall. Now I've got these create toolboxes, which are really cool. So if we put out a toolbox and you put stuff in it, and it helps you automatically equip. So when you're building stuff with Create, you know that you're just dealing with a ton of different things at the same time. This helps you manage that. So we're not going back constantly swapping our inventory around. It takes some getting used to, but it's really useful. I've got another toolbox here. This one's gray. You can color them, and we'll put all these things in here. These are the different things that we're going to use to do all this crafting today. Now, to access these toolboxes, you can right-click on them, grab something out of here. But what's amazing is that with a hotkey, by default it's the Alt key, but that's conflicting in this mod pack, so I've mapped this to the Tab key. So I just hold down the Tab key, and I have access within, like, I don't know, 8 or 16 blocks of these toolboxes. So from over here, and then I click on one of the toolboxes, and I can then access the things from that. So, all right, we've got our 4 machines built. Rather than show you how to build them, I thought I would get them all set up, and then we'll just talk about how they work. Okay, so we've got the power coming through the floor into a gearbox, which turns the corner. Now, gearboxes change the rotational direction. So as we move down the line, we've had to do some tricks to make sure that the rotation is going in the right direction for the belts. But in this case, we've got it going into this clutch, and we turn it on. This cogwheel turns this belt in the right direction. We now have the mechanical saw in the middle and another cogwheel connected to it. And cogwheels also change the direction. So it doesn't matter which way the saw turns, but 2 cogwheels away, we've got this second belt going in the right direction, and a sight funnels, which pull one thing out at a time, which is all we need for this machine, rather than a brass funnel, which allows us to do full stacks, filter, and all kinds of different things. Okay, I've got on here, let's take this off for now, an unfiltered mechanical saw, which is interesting how a mechanical saw works. If we take a quick look at the JEI for this, the mechanical saw itself processes, as you'd expect, where regular logs get stripped, and then the stripped versions get turned into planks. That's generally what this thing does. However, Create also pulls in all the block cutting recipes from the stone cutter, right? So all stones all have these many different recipes. And in fact, there's some weird block cutting recipes that get pulled in from other mods as well. Like right here is most notable, and we're going to see this in a second. The stone cutter turns an oak log into a hollow oak log thanks to the Twilight Forest mod that's in here. So oak logs have 2 recipes. That's all to show you that if we put a log in here, let's just put 2 logs in here. It's going to cycle through the 2 different recipes for logs. Well, we've got all kinds of other stuff in here. But right here is this hollow oak log, and the stripped oak log came out. Now if we put the stripped oak log in here, we're going to get planks. And we get 6 planks instead of 4 with the regular crafting recipes. So some of these things are more efficient. So that's pretty cool. But watch this. If I put in this cobbled deep slate, it's going to cycle through all these different deep slate stone cutter recipes. And it's filling up our inventory here with all these different things, which is pretty neat, but not a whole lot of control as to what's going on. Let's stop this. Now, to control this, to control what the saw actually makes, we can put a pattern in here for a stripped log, which I don't actually have one now. Let's see if we get a stripped log with 1. Nope. Hollow. There's our stripped log. And we put this in here in the filter, in the recipe filter. Now this mechanical saw will make nothing but stripped logs. Now, if we put a stripped log, well, let's put 2 oak logs in here. Instead of making a hollow log, it made 2 stripped logs, which is what we want. We don't want any hollow logs. However, it will not do anything else. It just sent that stripped log straight through and didn't make it into planks. We're going to want to use this saw for something other than stripped logs. This could be a single purpose saw. And if we're just wanting stripped logs for this, which is what we want, because we're making andesite casings, or casings which require stripped logs for the first step, that's great. But what if we want this thing to do other stuff too? So we can set up a filter with multiple things in here. So this is the allow list. This is what it's going to allow this thing to make. And the shaft recipe is cool because instead of using 2 alloys to get 8 shafts or 1 to 4, we can get 1 to 6. So if we use this thing for making shafts, we save a good amount of andesite alloy. So that's why I've got this thing set up for these 3 filters. And now we just apply this thing on here. And now this saw will make those 3 things. So we put some andesite alloy in here. We put some logs in here. And we put some strip logs in here. And let's put something else in here too. Let's put cobble deep slate. Now if we turn this on, it's turning those into shafts. It's turning these logs into strip logs, the strip logs into planks, and it's just sending the cobble deep slate right through, even though an unfiltered saw will do stuff with those. Pretty neat. So let's grab these things out. So there's a lesson on recipe filters, and so, for example, the basin has a recipe filter as well. So we can tell this thing to only make certain things. All right, so there's the mechanical saw. Next in line is where we're going to apply the casing material, in this case andesite alloy, to strip logs. So we'll put a couple strip logs in here. We've got a deployer. So the same setup in the back. Gearbox going into a clutch, it's turned off. Similar setup here with the belts. In this case, though, we're powering the cogwheel up here, so we need to get these. We're powering a deployer up here, so we get these cogwheels coming up. To feed the deployer, we have a chute with a barrel on top of it, and the barrel we'll just make 1. And so now this deployer is now holding 1 alloy, 1 andesite alloy, and you can see it right here. It's got it in its hand. And if we turn this machine on, it's going to send the strip log through, apply the andesite alloy to it, and we've already got some stuff in here, but there's 10 andesite casing. Let's turn this on. Can I reach that switch? There we go. And now we have 11 andesite casings. Now, when there's an active deployer over a belt with nothing in the hand, it stops the item from going through. So if we just put another, let's put a piece of brass in there. And there we go. We got a brass casing from that one. So there's 4 different kinds of casings: andesite casing, brass casing, copper casing, which is the same thing, and train casing, which is this sturdy sheet on top of a brass casing. So we need to put a brass casing in, sturdy sheet on top, and we'll get a train casing coming out. So that's how we can manually use this machine to create casings. We're going to automate all this stuff later on. All right, now here, this machine, basically the exact same setup, but this one we're going to use to make polished rose quartz. So we've got 8 in here. Let's put 1 rose quartz here. And in here, this thing needs to hold sandpaper. And sandpaper is destructible and has multiple use. So we can't just do a 1-for-1, put one thing in here and 1 sandpaper in here. A sandpaper, I think, goes for 8 uses. Now this hand is holding the sandpaper. We turn this on, it's going to polish that rose quartz. Let's grab some more rose quartz. 10 of these and put them all in here. So now we've got 11. That's too much for 1 piece of sandpaper, so we're going to see that it is going to get worn out. All right, let's turn this on. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the sandpaper broke, and here we are with the rose quartz waiting on the belt. Let's turn that off. And now we've got all the rose quartz in here. Excellent. Again, we're going to automate all this. And finally, this here is how we make a precision mechanism, which is a 5-phase, 3-step process to turn a gold sheet into a precision mechanism. Now, it's also important to note that there's only an 80% chance that we're going to get a precision mechanism out of here, and 20% chance that we're going to get something else. So it's not always going to work, is really what it comes down to. So we need to just factor that into our automation later, or even when this thing's working, right? So let's take this off at first, because we're going to need a partially processed mechanism to set that filter. Okay, so here's our 3 deployers. Exact same setup as these 2 other things. It's just 3 of them in a row. So we've got these connected in the back. We've got the power coming out of the floor, the lever on a clutch. Except for this time, we've got a belt going this way. All these cogwheels up here powering the deployers. Chutes on top of the deployers to fill them up. And barrels, right? Same as the last 2 machines. Andesite funnels. However, we need a return belt because we have to run things through here 5 times. So we've got a couple of gearboxes here running over here, and those gearboxes are just enough to reverse the order of the rotation, so it sends things back in this direction to put the unfinished precision mechanism back into the initial barrel. And if we turn this on, we can see it all working. Now, according to the recipe, we need to, the first step is a small cogwheel, the second step is a large, and the third step is an iron nugget. And we've got those right here. This one has 11 cogwheels, 11 large cogwheels, and 28 iron nuggets in here. So we can just fill these barrels. In fact, to help us keep it organized, let's do this. Let's put some placards on here. These placards are pretty cool. So now we know what goes in there. So they're like item frames. Pretty cool. All right. So now we just need a gold sheet, which we have one. We put it in here. Let's turn this off. Put the gold sheet in here. Just one. And this is going to go through 5 times. So it's going to use 5 of each of these things. Processed by each of those 3 things, and it's now sitting in here. Incomplete precision mechanism. We can actually see its progress. It's pretty neat. 3 of 15 steps. The next one is to deploy a cogwheel on it. So if we're doing this manually, we could pick one of these up and know exactly what we need to do next. But we're not going to do that. We are going to set this up with a filter like this. And it's already set up. Let's just trash it, clear it out. And we put this incomplete precision mechanism in here like that. So now this is set up to allow incomplete precision mechanisms to come out. So if there's a complete one, it would not come out. And we've got it set to ignore the data, which is all of this stuff inside it. 3 of 15 steps in the recipe. So we don't care where it is in the sequence. We just care that it is not finished. So we're going to ignore all of the data. And that's it. We've got our filter, and we put it into a brass funnel coming out of here. There we go. Now, if you're thinking we could have just put a complete mechanism on here, on this filter, but we need to change the direction as well. Pause that thought. Just right-click so the arrow's pointing out. So if you're thinking we could have just put a complete precision mechanism on here and deny it, that would work, except sometimes trash comes out of this process and it's going to send it back through. Like sometimes you can get a gold nugget instead of a precision mechanism, and it would send the gold nugget out and back through again. So that's no good. All right, so let's put our incomplete precision mechanism back in here. It's going to come straight out and run back through the process again. And there it goes. This is step 2. Step 3. 4. And 5. And we successfully got a completed precision mechanism. So we won the odds on that one. There was an 80% chance that this was going to work, and it did. Now we just need to automate these things by connecting them up to Applied Energistics 2, which we did on these two over here. Now again, we could round this corner, not catch the stripped logs in a barrel here, but just turn them around the corner, run the stripped logs straight in here, and set up a dedicated machine with belts and automate that. Ooh, I just clicked the mouse by mistake. That's bad timing. Not a problem. You know, and we can have dedicated machines for all these things. And that's if you're just using Create by itself, and that's fun, really cool. But we've got Applied Energistics here, and we're setting up the automation. So let's set up one of these things, and then I will set up the rest off camera and explain them all. So let's run our Fluix cable all the way over here like this. And what we want on this is a pattern provider on this one. This is the input. And an import bus on this one. And connect them. And like this. So we've got a pattern provider on here, and so let's put a pattern for stripped logs. So we come over to our pattern encoding terminal and look for stripped logs. We want the sawing pattern. We're going to get a log, and it's going to make a stripped log, just like this. We put that right here in this pattern provider. And now anything that's in here is going to go into the network, and here is emptying still. So all the stuff that was in that barrel is now been pulled back into our ME network. So now if we need a strip log, let's make 10 strip logs. Start, and it needs to be powered. So let's turn it on. Here they come. Strip logs all went back into our network and completed the pattern. Now we have to work out how to automatically turn this thing off and on with this clutch. And we're going to do that with level emitters, and until we do that, we have to leave this running in order for these patterns to work. Simple as that. So this one's going to be a little more tricky because we have two components to the recipe. We need a strip log to come in here when we want to make a casing, and we have the casing material, and that may be different. So we can set that up with different patterns and send things through one at a time to get processed like that. And things are going to be also a little different over here because we're not going to put the sandpaper as part of the pattern. We're just going to fill this thing automatically with sandpaper, and likewise here, we're just going to fill these things automatically with these components, and then the pattern itself is only going to send gold sheets through here. All right, I'm going to set that up, and I'll be right back. Okay, let's take a look at how we've got all these things set up. I've got all of these machines automated with Applied Energistics. Here's our saw again, very simple pattern provider on this end, import bus on this end. This one was a bit more tricky, and let's talk about how this one works. So this one takes a casing material like andesite, brass, or copper, and also a stripped log as its input. And because these things go in two different places, we have to split them up. So over here, we have a pattern provider. It's got all these different patterns. For example, this one takes a stripped log and andesite alloy and puts them into this barrel. Now there's two outputs on this barrel on this one. We've got this smart chute here filtered only for the stripped log, which drops the log down onto the belt. And on this side over here, we have, it's kind of tough to see. Let's go back around the front again. We have a brass funnel with a item filter in it, configured to pull out the different materials, brass, copper, and andesite, and puts them on this belt to go into this chute through this andesite funnel to drop these things down and put them in the deployer hand. So the strip logs come down here on the belt. The andesite, for example, goes up here and comes into this deployer hand and makes the casings. On this barrel here is another import bus just to pull the things out into the network. Very simple. And we'll take a look at how all these things work at once at the end when we turn it all on. Okay, so here is the polishing machine, and it has sandpaper in this hand, and it's a little bit different because we're not putting the sandpaper in the pattern here. So here's the pattern provider, and this thing only does 2 patterns for polishing. It's the rose quartz, and all we do is put a rose quartz in here, and it goes into this barrel. Very simple, goes down the belt and gets processed by this hand. What's different here is that we're always keeping this hand full of sandpaper, this deployer, and we're doing that with an export bus. This export bus is configured to pull sandpaper out of the network, so we'll always pull sandpaper if it can to put it into the deployer hand. And if there's no sandpaper, thanks to this crafting card right here, the export bus says, hey, network, can you make one of these? We need it. And it will put that in here, and it will always keep this full of sandpaper. So when the sandpaper breaks, it'll pull another one from the network and put it right into the deployer hand. So pretty easy. And over here is the import bus that puts this stuff back into the network. This is very similar. The processing pattern for the precision mechanism, again, it's only got a golden sheet on it. So we're only putting a sheet in this barrel right here. We watched this work earlier. The sheet comes down here on this belt and gets processed by these 3 deployers that have these 3 different components in them. Small cogwheel, big cogwheel, and iron. Let's see how these are set up. Very similar to the last one. It's an export bus configured for a cogwheel with a crafting card. Same thing with those other 2. And this import bus here is configured to only pull a precision mechanism out. So it's not going to pull the partial ones, and it's actually not going to pull out the junk that comes out. Because remember, sometimes, 80% of the time, well, 20% of the time, this recipe fails. So this isn't the best situation for autocrafting, because sometimes it's going to fail and it will never finish. If it makes a gold nugget, for example, and it's just going to leave it in that barrel, and this processing pattern is just not going to finish. But thankfully, we just don't need that many precision mechanisms. So really, it's not going to be a problem for us. Okay, you might have noticed that none of these things are running right now, because we've got them all turned off with these redstone links. Now, I added a redstone link to every one of these clutches. So this redstone link has, I'm putting cogs on all of these, and the bottom one is representative of what the machine's doing. That's a saw. It doesn't look like it because it's kind of upside down, but that's a saw on that redstone link. Over here, we've got a redstone link with andesite casing on it. Notice that these redstone links are all set up to receive the signal. They've got that little ring around the antenna. This one has some sand on it to represent sandpaper, and this one has a gold block on it to represent that we're sending gold sheets through here. Okay, so these all are powered from somewhere, and they're causing the clutch to not go. Let's take a look at our control room to see how we're automatically turning these things off and on. And again, these have already been set up. This one has the press on it, and that one has the mixer on it. In this back room, here's kind of our controller room, and here's where the corresponding redstone links are all set up for those 6 different machines. They're all powered all the time by this redstone torch to keep them on and makes the machines stop. Now, how we toggle this to turn a machine on is by using these level emitters. And a level emitter has a few different purposes. And if we put a crafting card inside a level emitter, it emits a redstone signal while the item in this filter slot right here is crafting. You can also use level emitters to keep a certain number of things in stock and that sort of thing. But in this particular case, with the crafting card in here, we're using the level emitter to emit redstone while the item is crafting. So this is connected to our network through this Fluix cable, and it's coming out here, and it's just connected out here to our main network. Like that right there. It's connected to the yellow dense cable. And so it has access to our crafting, and it knows whether we're crafting, in this case, a precision mechanism, or in this case, if we're crafting polished rose quartz, or if we're crafting polished jade, all the way down the line. And some of these things do more things, and we have more level emitters. And the level emitters are pointing into this redstone signal right here in such a way that if any of these are on, it powers this redstone line, flips the torch off, unpowers the redstone link, and it turns the machine on. And I have switches here so we can actually see this working. If we power this, which would happen if, for example, we were crafting brass ingots. Now that redstone link down there is turned off, and this machine is running. Turn that off. Now this machine is off. Let's watch some of our machines work. First of all, let's make a precision mechanism. Just one. There it goes. That's going through the motion. Let's also make some polished rose quartz. Make 10 of these so we can see the sandpaper break. Sandpaper broke and it got replenished automatically. This finished up. That means we got a precision mechanism because that crafting pattern stopped. This should stop in a second. There it goes. Finally, let's make some andesite casing. And we're going to need to craft strip logs and then the andesite casing. So there goes our log processing. And now the logs are getting moved in with the andesite into this machine. And now that they've finished up, they will stop. If we didn't have this level emitter system set up and all the machines were all running all the time like this, you can see they're all going. Basically using up our entire windmill. But by using level emitters and turning things off automatically, we are able to conserve a ton of this rotational force. And we can set up basically infinite machines just running off that windmill. Pretty cool. All right, I think we're going to wrap up there. That was quite an episode. If you learned something, please like the video. And to keep up with our Valhelsia 5 series, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about anything I did here today, please drop a comment and let me know what you think, and I will do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I appreciate you.